The rain in Los Angeles was the kind that didn't wash the city clean, it just made the streets shine like gray oil. It was a Tuesday night in the middle of November, the kind of night that kept people indoors. Inside the upscale bistro, the air smelled of expensive coffee and lemon polish. Elena stood behind the counter, her feet throbbing inside her black leather shoes. She had been working double shifts for 2 weeks straight, and the exhaustion was starting to settle deep in her bones. She checked her watch. It was just past 8 o'clock. The restaurant was usually buzzing by this time, but the storm had scared away most of the usual crowd. Only a few regulars sat in the corner, typing on laptops or nursing cups of soup. Elena let out a quiet sigh and picked up a cloth to wipe down the counter for the third time. She was thinking about her stack of bills at home: rent, electricity, student loans. It felt like a heavy weight sitting on her chest. "Make sure the water glasses are spotless, Elena," a sharp voice cut through the quiet. Elena flinched slightly. It was Mr. Sterling, the manager. He was a man who believed that fear was a better management tool than kindness. He walked around with a clipboard, inspecting everything from the angle of the napkins to the shine of the silverware. "Yes, Mr. Sterling," Elena said politely, forcing a small smile. "Business is slow because of the weather," he grumbled, tapping his pen against the clipboard. "That doesn't mean we lower our standards. I want this place looking perfect. We have a reputation to uphold." Elena nodded and went back to work. She didn't argue. She needed this job too much. She was a good worker, always on time, always polite to the customers, even the difficult ones. She treated everyone the same, whether they were rich or just looking for a warm place to sit. Mr. Sterling didn't care about kindness, though. He only cared about money and appearances. At 8:10, the heavy front door pushed open. A gust of cold, wet wind blew into the restaurant, making the candles flicker on the tables. A man stepped inside, shaking his umbrella. He looked soaked. His jacket was a simple, worn-out leather one, and his jeans were old and faded. He wore a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, trying to hide his face. The hostesses near the front, 2 young women named Chloe and Tara, stopped whispering immediately. They stared at him, their eyes going wide. One of them nudged the other, whispering something behind her hand. They recognized him, but they were too excited to do anything about it. Elena looked up from the counter. She saw a tall man who looked incredibly tired. He didn't look like a movie star in that moment, he just looked like someone who had a long, rough day and wanted to escape the rain. Water dripped from the hem of his coat onto the expensive tiled floor. Most servers in a place like this might have ignored him or made him wait, hoping someone else would take the table. The customers in the upscale bistro usually wore suits and designer dresses. This man looked like he just wanted to disappear. But Elena didn't see his clothes or his status. She just saw a person who was cold and wet. She walked out from behind the counter, grabbing a clean, dry towel from the shelf on her way. "Good evening," she said softly, approaching him. "Welcome in from the storm." The man looked up, startled. He seemed to shrink back a little, as if he was used to people making a scene when they saw him. He kept his head down, bracing himself for cameras or shouting. "Hi," he mumbled. His voice was rough and quiet. "It's really coming down out there," Elena said with a sympathetic smile. She held out the towel. "Here, please, take this. You're soaked." He hesitated for a second, then reached out and took the towel. His fingers were cold. "Thanks," he said. He wiped the rain from his face and took off his cap. Even with messy, wet hair and tired eyes, there was no mistaking him. It was Keanu Reeves? But Elena didn't gasp. She didn't ask for a selfie. She just watched him relax his shoulders, grateful that she wasn't making a big deal out of it. "Would you like a table away from the window?" Elena asked. "It's a bit drafty over there." "Yes, please," he said. "Somewhere quiet would be great." Elena led him past the staring hostesses and the curious customers. She could feel the eyes following them. Mr. Sterling was watching from the office doorway, his brow furrowed as he looked at the damp, unassuming man in the worn jacket. He didn't look pleased. She guided the actor to a small booth in the back corner, tucked away from the main entrance. It was warm, dimly lit, and private. The best seat in the house if you just wanted to be left alone. "Is this okay?" she asked. "It's perfect," he said, offering her a genuine, tired smile. "Thank you. You have no idea how much I appreciate this." "It's no trouble at all," Elena replied. "I'll give you a few minutes to dry off, and then I'll grab you some hot water or maybe some coffee, whatever you need." "Just coffee sounds great right now," he nodded. Elena walked back toward the kitchen, her heart feeling a little lighter. She liked helping people. It was the reason she took this job, even if the pay wasn't great and the boss was difficult. She felt good that she could give him a moment of peace. However, as she neared the counter to get the coffee, the mood in the restaurant shifted. The hostesses were whispering louder now, looking at their phones. Through the large glass windows, flashes of lightning were followed by the glare of camera lenses. A black SUV with tinted windows had pulled up outside, but that wasn't the only problem. Two men with cameras were standing under the awning, snapping pictures through the glass. Mr. Sterling walked out of his office. The look on his face had changed from annoyed to something else, calculating. He saw the cameras outside. He saw the famous actor sitting in the back booth. And then he looked at Elena. Elena picked up the coffee pot, intending to go back and serve her customer, but she had a feeling that the easy part of the night was over. The air suddenly felt thick with tension. The simple act of kindness had set something in motion that Elena couldn't control, and Mr. Sterling was already marching toward her, his eyes locked on the booth in the corner. The flashing lights from outside grew brighter, cutting through the calm mood of the restaurant like a knife. It wasn't just the storm anymore, it was the aggressive, strobe-like pop of camera flashes. The paparazzi had realized who was sitting in the back corner, and they were pressing their lenses right against the glass, desperate for a shot. The other customers in the bistro stopped eating and began to whisper, craning their necks to see what the commotion was about. Elena stood behind the counter, clutching a coffee pot. She watched Mr. Sterling, the manager, march toward her. He didn't look angry anymore. In fact, he looked excited. There was a greedy glint in his eyes that made Elena's stomach turn. He wasn't worried about the customer's comfort, he was seeing dollar signs. To him, a celebrity in the restaurant wasn't a human being trying to eat dinner, it was free advertising. "Look at this," Mr. Sterling whispered, pointing a manicured finger toward the window. "Do you know who that is?" Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. That's why I put him in the corner. He wanted to be left alone." Mr. Sterling let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. "Alone, Elena? You don't turn down a moment like this. Do you have any idea how much traffic our social media pages will get if we post a photo of him eating here? We need to move him." "Move him?" Elena asked, confusion knitting her eyebrows together. "He's already eating his soup." "Move him to the center table," Mr. Sterling commanded, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "The one right under the chandelier. Turn up the lights over there. I want to get a good video for Instagram. Maybe we can get him to sign a napkin or something. Stop being so shy and go make it happen." Elena looked over at the booth. The actor had his head down, his spoon hovering halfway to his mouth. Every time a camera flashed outside, he flinched slightly. He looked exhausted and trapped. He wasn't a prop for the restaurant's marketing, he was a person who was clearly having a terrible day. The thought of dragging him out of his safe corner and parading him under the bright lights just for a few likes on the internet felt wrong. It felt cruel. "Sir," Elena started, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't think that's a good idea. He looks really tired. He just came in to get out of the rain. If we make a scene, it might upset the other customers, too." Mr. Sterling's face hardened instantly. The friendly mask slipped, revealing the impatience underneath. "I don't pay you to think, Elena, I pay you to do what you're told. This is a business opportunity. Now, go over there and tell him we are upgrading his seat. If he won't move, I'll go over there myself." He turned on his heel and walked back toward the kitchen, leaving Elena standing there with a heavy weight in her chest. She knew that if she didn't do it, she would be in trouble. Mr. Sterling was not a forgiving man. But as she looked at the man in the booth, she knew she couldn't betray his privacy like that. She remembered how grateful he was just to be given a dry towel. He trusted her, in a small way. She took a deep breath and made a decision. She wasn't going to be the reason his night got worse. Instead of walking over to the booth to confront him, Elena went to the supply closet and grabbed a large black umbrella. Then, she walked into the kitchen. The heat from the stoves hit her face, and the smell of garlic and onions was strong. The cooks were busy shouting orders. Elena moved quickly to the back door, the one that led to the alleyway where the trash bins were kept. She peeked out the small, greasy window. It was dark and wet, but there were no photographers back there. The coast was clear. She walked back out onto the floor, but she didn't go to the center table. She walked straight to the corner booth. Keanu looked up as she approached, his guard up, probably expecting her to ask for a selfie or tell him he had to leave. "Is everything okay?" he asked quietly. Elena leaned in close, speaking softly so no one else could hear. "Mr. Sterling wants to move you to the center of the room," she whispered. "He wants to turn on the lights and take pictures for social media. There are photographers out front waiting for you." The actor's shoulders slumped. He closed his eyes for a second and let out a long breath. "I don't want that," he said, his voice barely audible. "I really just wanted a quiet meal." Elena nodded. "I know. And I'm not going to let him do it. But he's watching." The man looked at her, surprised. He saw the resolve in her eyes. "What do I do?" "Finish your coffee," Elena said calmly. "When you're ready, stand up and walk toward the restrooms. I'll meet you there. Do not go back out the front door." Understanding dawned on his face. A small, relieved smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You're leading me out the back." "I am," she said. "It's raining in the alley, and it smells like garbage, but at least you'll be free." He chuckled softly, a genuine sound this time. "That sounds perfect." Elena walked away, her heart hammering against her ribs. She felt like she was in a heist movie. She signaled the other server to cover the floor for a moment. Then, She walked to the hallway near the bathrooms and waited. A moment later, the actor appeared. He had pulled his cap back down low. "Follow me," Elena whispered. She opened the heavy steel door that led into the bustling kitchen. The noise was immediate: clanging pans, hissing grills, and loud music. The chefs looked up in surprise as the famous actor walked through their domain in his worn-out jacket. Elena didn't stop. She walked with purpose, weaving between the stainless steel tables. "Just passing through, she muttered to a confused cook holding a ladle. They reached the heavy metal back door. Elena pushed the bar handle, and cold air rushed in to meet them. The rain was falling hard in the alleyway, bouncing off the dumpsters. She popped the umbrella open. "Your car is probably around front," she said, raising her voice over the sound of the rain. "Do you have a driver coming, or did you walk?" "I have a driver up the street," he said, pulling his jacket tighter. "This is more than enough." "Thank you." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. The weariness in his eyes was mixed with deep gratitude. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "You're risking your job for me." "Everyone deserves a break sometimes," Elena said simply. "Especially on a night like this." He reached out and gently squeezed her arm. "You're a good person, Elena. I won't forget this." Then he turned and walked out into the rain, disappearing into the shadows of the alleyway. Elena watched him go for a second, then closed the heavy metal door. The noise of the kitchen shut out, leaving her alone in the hallway. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She had done the right thing. It felt good. But as she turned back toward the dining room to return to her station, she saw Mr. Sterling standing there. He was blocking the hallway. His arms were crossed over his chest, and his face was purple with rage. He had seen everything. "Get your things," he said, his voice dangerously low. "You're done here." The silence in the hallway felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm breaks. Elena stood frozen, her hands still resting on the metal door handle she had just closed. Behind her, the alleyway was dark and wet, but in front of her, Mr. Sterling was blocking the way back to safety. His face wasn't just red anymore, it was a shade of purple that usually warned people to step back. He wasn't looking at her like an employee. He was looking at her like she had just robbed the cash register. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" he asked, his voice low and trembling with suppressed rage. He didn't shout. A whisper can sometimes be much scarier than a yell. Elena swallowed hard. Her mouth felt dry, like she had been eating cotton. "I helped a customer, Mr. Sterling." He was uncomfortable. The paparazzi were harassing him through the window. It was the right thing to do. The right thing. Mr. Sterling took a step forward, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and coffee breath. "Do you think you are paid to have a moral compass? You are a server. Your job is to bring plates to tables and fill water glasses. When a celebrity walks in here, you treat them like a king, even if they want to be treated like a nobody. Do you know how much free publicity we just lost?" He didn't want to be seen, Elena said, her voice shaking but staying steady. He just wanted to eat dinner. If you had moved him to the center, you would have humiliated him. I don't care about his feelings. Mr. Sterling snapped, losing his cool for a moment. I care about this business. We have bills to pay, Elena. That man sitting in the corner was a lottery ticket, and you just tore it up. We could have been on every entertainment news site tonight. We could have had lines around the block next week. Elena looked past him, into the kitchen. The cooks had stopped working. They were pretending to chop vegetables, but their eyes were darting toward the confrontation. The dishwasher was staring openly, his mouth slightly open. They all knew what was coming. In a place like this, where power was everything, the manager always won. "I'm sorry you feel that way," Elena said softly, "but I couldn't let you do that to him." "Sorry doesn't pay the rent," Mr. Sterling spat. He took a deep breath, straightening his suit jacket as if trying to compose himself. "You are insubordinate. You have cost this establishment potential revenue. I can't have someone working here who thinks they know better than the owner." He didn't say "you're fired" right away. He dragged it out, making the punishment feel heavier. "Give me your apron," he demanded, holding out his hand. "And your key card. You are done here. I don't want to see your face in this restaurant again." Elena felt a physical blow hit her chest, right below her ribs. The air left her lungs. She knew things had been bad, but a part of her hoped that maybe, just maybe, he would yell a bit and then calm down. But this was final. She was losing her job. "Mr. Sterling, please," she tried, her voice cracking. "I need this job. I have a family to support. I've worked here for 2 years. I've never been late. You know that." "Then you should have known better," he said coldly, not moving his hand. "Don't make a scene. Take off the apron and leave. If you cause trouble, I will make sure you never work in this town again. I have connections." It was a cruel threat, and the worst part was that it might have been true. Mr. Sterling knew a lot of restaurant owners. If he blacklisted her, she wouldn't just be out of a job tonight, she would be out of a career. With trembling fingers, Elena reached behind her back to untie the strings of her black apron. It felt symbolic, like she was undressing in front of a crowd. She pulled it off and folded it neatly, even though she wanted to throw it on the floor. She placed the small keycard on top of the fabric and put it in his outstretched hand. "Get your stuff from the locker room and get out," he said, turning his back on her. "Don't talk to the customers. Don't talk to the staff. Just go." Elena walked past him, her head held high even though tears were stinging the corners of her eyes. She walked through the kitchen, unable to look at the cooks. She heard the whispers start up the moment she passed them. "I can't believe she did that," one whispered. "But it was kind of cool, right?" "She's definitely fired," another one murmured. She pushed open the door to the tiny break room. It was a cramped space with lockers lining one wall and a small table littered with old magazines. Her bag was sitting on the floor, right where she left it. She opened her locker, which was mostly empty except for a spare sweater and a photo of her parents taped to the inside door. As she threw her things into her bag, the reality of the situation started to sink in. The rent was due in 3 days. Her phone bill was overdue. She didn't have enough savings to survive a month without a paycheck. Panic started to rise in her throat, choking her. She grabbed her sweater and shoved it in the bag, zipping it shut with too much force. She looked at herself in the small mirror on the locker door. Her eyes were red, her mascara slightly smudged. She looked tired, just like the man she had helped. Was it worth it? She asked her reflection. She thought about the look on his face when he realized he could escape. The relief. The simple thank you he gave her. He was a person who had everything, but in that moment, he just needed someone to see him as a human being. Yes, she whispered to herself. It was worth it. Even if it costs me everything. She took a deep breath, shouldered her bag, and walked out of the break room. The hallway was empty. Mr. Sterling had probably gone back to his office to count the money or complain on the phone. The hostesses were at the front counter, looking at phones and giggling, oblivious to the fact that a life had just been changed in the back of the restaurant. Elena walked through the dining room. The few customers left didn't even look up. To them, she was invisible. She was just another nameless worker in a black shirt. She reached the heavy front door. The hostesses glanced up, looking surprised to see her leaving so early, but they didn't say anything. They probably knew better than to ask questions. Elena pushed the door open. The cool night air hit her face, instantly cooling her hot cheeks. The rain had slowed down to a drizzle, but the ground was still wet, reflecting the streetlights like puddles of ink. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, under the awning. She looked to her right, where the alleyway was dark. She looked to her left, where the photographers had finally given up and driven away. She was alone. She pulled her phone out of her pocket to check the time, but she saw 3 missed text messages from her roommate asking about the electric bill. A tear finally escaped and rolled down her cheek. She put her hood up and stepped out into the damp street, her shoes splashing in a puddle. She felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at the injustice, fear of the future, but also a quiet sense of pride. She had done a good thing today. She had protected someone's dignity. And even though tonight felt like the end of the world, she knew, deep down, that she would sleep okay knowing she hadn't sold out her integrity for a boss who didn't care about her. With a heavy heart but a clear conscience, she began the long walk home. 2 days had passed since the night in the alleyway, and the silence in Elena's small apartment was deafening. In the past, when she had a day off, she would sleep in, watch movies, and enjoy the quiet. But now, the silence felt like a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. Every time the refrigerator hummed or the neighbor upstairs walked across the floor, it reminded her that she wasn't at work. She wasn't earning money. Elena sat at her small kitchen table, her laptop open in front of her. The screen was filled with job listings, but the words were starting to blur together. Hostess needed, server wanted, experience preferred. It all looked the same. She had already applied to 12 different places that morning. Her fingers were trembling slightly from too much coffee and not enough food. She had skipped breakfast to save what little she had left in her pantry. She looked at her phone, which lay face down on the table. She was afraid to pick it up. She knew the landlord's name would pop up sooner or later, asking for the rent. She was already 2 weeks late on the previous month, and the new month was just around the corner. The fear of eviction wasn't just a distant worry anymore, it was a real, breathing monster sitting in the corner of the room. With a groan of frustration, Elena closed her laptop. She couldn't stare at the screen any longer. She felt useless. Standing up for what was right was supposed to make you feel good, wasn't it? Movies always showed the hero winning in the end. But in real life, doing the right thing just meant you were unemployed and broke while the bad guys went right back to making money. She walked over to the window and looked out. The Los Angeles sun was shining, mocking her mood. The city looked beautiful from up here, but she knew how cold it could be. She grabbed her jacket and decided she needed to get out of the apartment before she drove herself crazy with worry. She needed fresh air. Elena walked a few blocks to a small park near her neighborhood. It wasn't a fancy park with big fountains, just a patch of green grass, some old trees, and a few wooden benches facing a playground. She found an empty bench and sat down. The wood was damp from the sprinklers, soaking through her jeans, but she didn't move. She watched a young mother pushing a stroller, laughing at something the toddler was saying. She saw an old man feeding pigeons, completely content with his simple routine. Everyone else seemed to have a place in the world, a purpose. Elena felt like she had been erased. Desperate for a distraction, she pulled out her phone. She hesitated, then opened the social media app for the restaurant. She shouldn't look. She knew it would only hurt, but she couldn't help herself. The first post was a picture of a fancy cocktail with the caption, "Quality service is the heartbeat of our brand. We appreciate those who understand the vision." It was a vague, passive-aggressive shot at her. But the post below that was worse. It was a video Mr. Sterling had posted. He was standing in the dining room, looking smooth and professional. "Sometimes," he said to the camera, "we have to make tough decisions to maintain our standards. We want to thank our loyal guests for sticking with us. We are cleaning house to ensure you only get the best experience. No room for unprofessionalism here." The comments were pouring in. Some people were praising the restaurant, but many others were confused, asking what happened. A few people who had been there that night were commenting. "Did that girl get fired?" one person asked. "Because she was the only nice one working there." "Saw you kick that girl out," another comment read. "She was doing her job. You guys are toxic." Seeing the comments didn't make Elena feel better. It just stirred up the anger and humiliation all over again. Mr. Sterling was spinning the story, making her look like some kind of villain who didn't care about the customers. He was destroying her reputation in the industry, and there was nothing she could do about it. He had the platform, she had nothing. Elena threw her phone onto the bench next to her and put her face in her hands. The tears she had been holding back for 2 days finally broke free. They were hot and fast, soaking her palms. She cried for the bills she couldn't pay. She cried for the unfairness of it all. She cried because she felt foolish for thinking that kindness mattered in a world that only cared about profit. "Stupid," she whispered to herself, her voice cracking. So stupid. She felt a rock in her stomach, heavy and cold. The reality was that she might lose her apartment. She might have to move back in with her parents in another state, admitting defeat. She would have to leave the city she loved, giving up on her dreams because she tried to help a famous person who probably didn't even remember her name now. He was back in his mansion, safe and wealthy, and she was sitting on a damp park bench, wondering how she would buy groceries. The afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the grass. The park emptied out a little as people headed home for dinner. Elena stayed frozen, her energy drained. She felt paralyzed by the hopelessness of it all. It wasn't just about a job, it was about the crushing realization that no matter how hard you worked, one person with power could take it all away in a second. Just as she was wiping her eyes, preparing to drag herself back to her empty apartment to face a bowl of cereal for dinner, she heard the sound of an engine. It wasn't the loud rumble of a city bus or the sputter of a taxi. It was a deep, smooth purr. Elena looked up, her vision still slightly blurry from tears. A sleek black car was pulling up to the curb right in front of her bench. It was the kind of car you rarely saw in this neighborhood, a luxury SUV with tinted windows so dark you couldn't see inside. It slowed down and came to a gentle stop, right where she was sitting. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She thought for a second that maybe it was the police, or perhaps someone lost. She instinctively grabbed her bag, ready to leave, not wanting any more trouble today. She stood up to walk away, but before she could take a step, the back window of the car rolled down with a soft electronic whir. The movement was slow. The glass disappeared, revealing the interior of the car. It was spotless leather, smelling of new car and expensive air freshener. And sitting in the back seat, looking out at her with a serious expression, was the last person she expected to see. It was him. The actor from the restaurant. He wasn't wearing the baseball cap anymore. He was wearing a dark blazer and a clean shirt. He looked at her, his eyes locking onto hers, and for a moment, the noise of the city seemed to stop completely. Elena froze, her breath catching in her throat. She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed that he was seeing her like this, red-eyed, messy, and clearly falling apart. He didn't say hello immediately. He just looked at her with a mixture of concern and something that looked like guilt. He opened the door, and a black boot stepped out onto the curb. "Elena," he asked, his voice soft but carrying over the quiet park noise. Elena stood frozen on the damp sidewalk, her hands clutching the strap of her bag so tightly her knuckles turned white. Seeing him step out of that luxury car felt surreal, like a scene from a movie she had watched 100 times, except this was real life, and she was a mess. She quickly tried to wipe the tears from her cheeks with the sleeve of her jacket, embarrassed that he was seeing her like this. The actor closed the car door gently and walked toward her. He didn't have an entourage. There were no bodyguards blocking the way. It was just him, looking concerned. He was dressed in a simple dark coat, his hands buried in his pockets. "Elena," he said again, his voice softer than she remembered. He stopped a few feet away from her, giving her space, sensing that she might be overwhelmed. "I've been looking for you. I went to the restaurant, but the hostess told me what happened." Elena felt her face burn with shame. She looked down at her sneakers. "I'm sorry you had to come back there. It's okay, really. You don't need to worry about it." "It is not okay," he said firmly. There was a sadness in his eyes that made her heart ache. "I asked around. Someone told me you lost your job because you helped me. Because you got me out the back door." Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. She didn't want to complain. She didn't want him to feel guilty. The manager, he just really wanted a photo op. He was angry I took you out the back. But honestly, it's fine. I was looking for a change anyway. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The actor stepped closer, shaking his head slowly. "That isn't right. I asked for privacy, and you were the only person there who listened. You didn't treat me like a ticket to fame. You treated me like a human being who was having a bad day. And because of that, you're out on the street." "It was my choice," Elena whispered, trying to hold back fresh tears. "I couldn't let them drag you to the center table. You looked so tired. It just felt mean." The actor looked at her for a long moment. The noise of the city cars honking, distant sirens, people chatting seemed to fade away. "Kindness is rare, Elena," he said quietly. "Especially in the city. And kindness that costs you something, that is the rarest thing of all. I can't just walk away and let you suffer because you were decent to me." "Really, I'll be okay," she insisted, though her voice cracked. "I just need to find another serving job." "You don't need another job like that," he said. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a thick white envelope. It was sealed, but it looked heavy. He held it out to her. Elena looked at the envelope, then up at him. "What is this?" "Please," he said, gently pressing it into her hand. "Take it." Her hands trembled as she took it. It felt substantial. She knew, even before looking, that it was a lot of money. A lifetime of money for someone like her. Panic spiked in her chest. I can't take this. It's too much. You don't owe me anything. I was just doing my job. You were doing a good job, he corrected her. And this isn't charity. It's gratitude. And it's also an investment. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a simple business card. He handed that to her as well. Elena looked down at the card. It had a logo for a charitable foundation and a phone number. This is for a foundation, she said, confused. I run a small private foundation that helps people in the arts and service industry, he explained. We have been looking for someone to handle outreach and community coordination. We need someone who is observant, kind, and trustworthy. Someone who sees people, not just labels. He looked her in the eye. I think that's you. Elena stared at him, her mouth slightly open. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a career, he said. One where you will be appreciated. The pay is 3 times what you were making at the bistro, and the benefits are good. But more importantly, you won't have a boss who tells you to humiliate people for likes. The reality of it crashed over her. The weight of the envelope in one hand, the card in the other. Just 10 minutes ago, she was worried about losing her apartment and starving. Now, she was holding safety in her hands. The relief was so intense it made her knees weak. Why, she asked, a tear spilling over and running down her cheek. Why would you do all this for a stranger? Because you stood up for me when you had nothing to gain, he said simply. I never forget a good turn, Elena. And I hate seeing good people get crushed by the bad ones. He reached out and gently squeezed her shoulder. Open the envelope when you get home. It should cover your rent and bills for the next 6 months so you can breathe easy while you transition to the new job. If you take it. Elena looked at the envelope, then back at his face. There was no pity in his expression, only respect. It was too much to process. It was a miracle. It felt like the universe had finally decided to pay her back for all the hard years. I don't know what to say, she choked out. You don't have to say anything, he smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Just promise me you won't lose that heart of yours. The world needs it. I promise, she whispered. Good. He glanced back at the waiting car. I have to go. Call the number on that card tomorrow morning. Tell them I sent you. They'll be expecting you. Wait, Elena said, stepping forward impulsively. She didn't ask for a selfie. She didn't ask for an autograph. She just wanted to hug him. Thank you. He opened his arms and gave her a quick, firm hug. It wasn't a Hollywood hug for the cameras, it was a hug between two friends. Take care of yourself, Elena. He turned and walked back to the car. Elena stood there, clutching the envelope and the card like they were made of gold. He got into the back seat, gave her one last wave through the open window, and then the dark glass slid up, hiding him from view. The car pulled away from the curb and merged into the traffic, disappearing down the street. Elena stood alone on the sidewalk again. But the heavy, suffocating weight that had been pressing down on her for 2 days was gone. The park looked different now. The sunlight hitting the wet grass didn't look mocking anymore, it looked hopeful. She looked down at the business card in her hand. A career. A future. She looked at the envelope. Security. A laugh escaped her throat, followed by a sob, and then she was crying freely. But these weren't tears of sadness or frustration. They were tears of overwhelming relief. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, not caring if anyone saw her this time. She had lost her job for doing the right thing, and in the end, doing the right thing had given her back her life. She took a deep breath of the cool air, feeling her lungs fill up properly for the first time in days. She picked up her bag, threw it over her shoulder, and turned toward home. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't walking toward a hopeless future. She was walking toward a new beginning.